All right, Sarah, public comments.
We have one public comment, Jesse Garrettson.
Thank you. I'm Jesse Garrettson, and it is with great sad. I wrote this down so I didn't mess up and not be able to repeat my thoughts. It's great sadness that I am making this public comment tonight, as I've totally enjoyed enhancing the streets of Pitkin. 1 week ago, I was still all in as a Pitkin volunteer. I've had a lifetime of leadership and mediation. And in the office of street commissioner, I've been put into a position of decision making and getting the job done. I've not done anything for the streets of the town of Pitkin that has not been done before me, but only building on what our forefathers established for all of us years ago. The demands from our Pitkin citizens for snow removal, street maintenance, drainage, bridge repairs, McFour, even yes, potholes. Our trustees have put me in a position of acquiring the most appropriate bids with the best providers. All of this I've done in the name of timeliness. I've reported these transactions to the Pitkin City Clerk and to the trustees in the report section of our monthly agendas. Because these reports are nearly never read at the meetings, only put on our town website, that means most of us residents don't even know how to find it. The transparency has failed. In the last week, I've discovered that I am no longer a good fit for the town of Pitkin street commission position. Only to do the grunt work, which is not my cup of tea, although I do enjoy it till the top of it. Job well done feels good. As you will note in tonight's reports, a month ago, I was told not to do any more street work, which includes potholes, until a reimbursement was figured out. As you will note, this topic has been going on for months. I will also tell you that inadequately maintained streets must have attention all through multiple month seasons. Just one example. River Street below First Street, the snow melt was running down First Street toward the creek, then making a right turn down street onto the middle of River Street, which was a mud and rut mess. This may sound like self-practice, but I saw it as an unfair responsibility for the Pitkin Street Commissioners called to do. That portion of River Street now has crown and is ready for 3/4 inch road rail base material and McFour. But due to scrutiny, I was questioned for a phone call what was my criteria for driving a street. It was a simple question. My simple answer was by the seat of my pants. That answer is not what was wanted, so I replied, there is not a 4 or 5 year program in place, so I apply gravel when I see it is needed. In closing, I have totally enjoyed being the volunteer street commissioner and would like to. However, I sadly apparently no longer am a good fit for this volunteer position. Therefore, as of tonight, I will regretfully resign from the volunteer street position of Pitkin. And tomorrow morning, I will contact and undo all of my supposedly unauthorized commitments for the town of Pitkin. Thank you, and I will miss seeing all of you on the streets of Pitkin. Jesse James Garrettson. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse, for all the hard work you put in. I certainly appreciate it. Sarah, were there any other public comments?
No.
Moving on. Town attorney report. Clay, did you have anything?
No, sir. Thank you.
And we'll move on to item 5-1, approve the meeting minutes from the April 15th regular meeting. board all had a chance to review the minutes? Any questions or comments?
Yes, I have a couple of small comments or questions. On page 2, under the large paragraph in the middle, where it says trustee Pitkin also stated the streets haven't been maintained for many years. I believe I said haven't been maintained this well for many years, I believe.
Okay, I can fix that.
And then the other question I have is, this is, I may have jotted it down wrong, on page 4, under the first motion to table item 3-1 and 3-2, it was seconded by myself. I have in my notes that Ramon seconded that, but I don't know if anybody else has notes on it they wrote down. Which, on page 4, at the top, motion to table items 3-1, 3-2. I believe Ramon and I said at the same time. I think that's what. But I just don't know which one. Either way, it's fine.
Does anybody have anything?
I don't, yeah,
Okay.
and
If you did at the same time, and if it's,
it just got, you got picked.
That's fine.
So,
That's fine.
okay,
I just want to be clear on. And then this is real. Heavy. 1, 2. Second to last page. Just other people cannot be treated different. Should be differently.
yes.
any other comments, revisions?
I'll move approval of the minutes of the date,
April 15th.
I'll say.
April 15th.
All right,
I'll second that
With those corrections.
with the correct.
right.
Yes.
With those corrections, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So carried. Moving on to item 5-2, discuss with possible action appointing Josh Ackerman as Parks and Rec Commissioner.
Mr. Ackerman is on the Zoom call, so if the board wanted to speak with him, ask him questions, or hear from him.
Okay. Josh, do you have anything you want to say to us?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I am obviously new to the community. I just recently bought 311 First Street and doing a lot of work to the house and giving it a lot of love. But, you know, I saw this position opened. I came to the Gunnison area about 8 years ago, bought some property in Crested Butte, and I actually own a ranch in Doyleville. Along Razor Creek. I'm a member of the Gunnison Stock Growers Association, and I fell in love with the small town of Pitkin, and you know I found an opportunity to volunteer and serve, and that's why I put my name in the hat to serve as Parks and Recreation Commissioner.
All right, thanks, Josh. Does the board have any questions of Josh? Jared?
Would you consider the position of street commissioner instead? I don't think positions.
I think the Parks and Rec serves me good. I actually, my wife and me, my wife's in education, and I have a 9-year-old daughter, a 7-year-old boy, and a 4-year-old boy. So I think playgrounds and equipment and recreation is in my wheelhouse.
All right, any other questions for Josh?
I'd like to make a motion to accept Joshua Ackerman as the Parks and Recreation Commissioner.
This is Chair and I second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to accept Josh Ackerman's application as a Parks and Rec Commissioner. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? So carried. Welcome aboard, Josh.
Thank you, guys. Look forward to working with you.
All right, item 5-3, discuss with possible action purchasing signage for River Street. Basically, sign stating that the street narrows to 15 feet. John, did you happen to get any pricing or not? Yeah, if you would, please.
Yeah, hold it up real close.
Yeah.
This is John Wise, and on behalf of my mother-in-law, Mary Jane Gooden, I propose that, we identify that River Street beyond 8th Street is reduced to a 15-foot right of way rather than typical 60 or 80 feet. And, I did.
John,
Okay.
Yes.
thank you.
Not accustomed to eating these things. When I talk about it. But anyway, I did try to talk with Mike Weaver to see if the people at the sign shop in Ohio City would be interested, and I never did get a response. So beyond that, I've done nothing.
Okay,
But I would like for the sign to also state that there's private property on both sides of the 15-foot line.
right. And I believe you provided information showing that the street width and the vacation and stuff that,
Yeah,
Right,
I
so-
documented everything and
Right.
sent it prior to the last meeting, so
Okay.
Sarah, that everything that is needed is been provided, correct?
Correct.
so I guess what I would like to say, if there's any comments from the board, go ahead. And then I'd like to have Sarah actually check on getting the pricing on 2 signs. And we can verify that wording, but street narrows and private property on each side of the road narrows.
Now, that would be very much appreciated. It's,
Okay,
and people are accustomed, and, you know, people aren't stupid on purpose. They just don't know. So they go up there, they're pulling a trailer, and all of a sudden, the street gets real narrow, then it bends. And they kind of panic, so the first thing they do is try to turn around on mother-in-law's driveway. You know, I got tire tracks on the beach field, I got flower beds run over, and it's just not accommodated for that, and they need to be warned ahead of time.
all right. Thanks, John. Board have any?
I do.
Go ahead.
Ramon. To be clear, you know, the request is to basically prevent vehicles from going down that road that can't turn around and come back out. And that happens. And that's where they get on private property. So I think the sign should be even more informational. I would also put on it, no turnaround and dead end. And technically, it may not be dead end. You can go on up the hill with the right equipment, but you know, people who do that know about it. And, you know, and even if it may seem a little bit too much to read, if you're zooming past at 30 miles an hour, maybe they'll slow down and read it. And the sign should be right where they need to turn around. So I put that on there.
All right,
Might add.
Ed?
Pricing. Oh, Ed, you know, sorry. Thank you. I might add, we're getting pricing on the sign, we need to have pricing on posts and installation of the signs as well. Since we call them the street commission.
yep, that's correct. Any other board comments?
Yeah, I don't think I'm in agreement to dead end though, because there are, I mean, we're right at the mouth of the Gunnison National Forest, and that's an access for 4-wheelers.
It doesn't, it's not gonna say keep out. But, you know, it's primarily for the large vehicles. They literally, you know, I've seen them go down there with either large RV and once with a trailer that's about 3 times the length of my little one. And, you know, it doesn't matter what it's access to, the sign needs to tell people that they can't get out if they're, not in an ATV or a motorcycle, basically.
Yes, I understand, but I think we can accomplish that without saying dead end, for the reason I just stated.
And I'd agree with Gerald, dead end. It's not a dead end road, it is a through road. Dead end is not through roads.
I think what we can do is, what we're trying to do is stop the trailer traffic. That's the ultimate goal here. So I think we can come up, and what I'd like, I guess, is Ramon, if you got suggestions, Ed, anybody else on the board, if you got suggestions on how it should be worded, if you would send those to Sarah, Sarah can send them out to the board. We'll get it finalized, and we'll need, of course, the amount of words will determine how big the sign needs to be and that. So if we can get that to Sarah, I would say within the next couple of days, that's reasonable. And then Sarah can contact the sign company and we can proceed from there. So,
Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to see us do this post haste because we are in the tourist season.
I would imagine probably the biggest drawback may be the sign company on how quickly they can get to it, but seeing as they're just down the road, probably, and we should probably get a couple bids for that.
Well,
So,
I did just do some preliminary checking, and you can purchase those metal signs online, and depending on the size, not including the posts, they did also sell the posts, but I didn't look at that. They started for a 12 by 18, I believe at $40. So nothing, egregiously expensive. If the board wants to go ahead and give a limit, if I can get the signs ordered and they're under the limit, then I can do that. That way we won't have to come back to the board. If it ends up being over the limit, then we'll bring it up in June.
all right, recommendations for a limit.
What'd you say that the sign that you looked at was?
So the one that I looked at was 12 inches by 18 inches, and I believe it was $37.
Was that reflective or?
It
Okay,
was reflective. It did
Yeah.
not include a special graffiti proof coating. That was, I believe, $11 extra. So,
I wouldn't object to anything up to $100.
per sign, because we're looking at two, right?
Like two.
Well, John had requested two, one on each side, but no? Maybe I misunderstood. Okay, so we're only looking at one. Okay, so that's, no, I thought you wanted one on each side, but that's all right. So we'll move forward. One sign. So $100 limit, the board in agreement?
Yes, but I don't think 12 by 18 sounds very, is that big enough?
it's not if you're putting 4 messages on it.
Yeah.
So that would definitely be something to consider.
We'll have to get the wording and what we want to Sarah, and then she can get it back to us and we can come up with an agreement, I believe. And so. Oh. Any other comments?
There are a couple of public comments if you are going to take those at some point.
All right. Public comments?
So
Yes.
we've got Pete and Susie online who would like to make a comment.
Okay. Pete, go ahead.
Yes, if the intent of these signs is to prevent problems with larger trailers turning around, you may need more than one sign. You may want to consider where they're placed. Because if they get up to the intersection of 8th and River, realize they need to turn around, depending on the size of the trailer, it could be a problem going down Aspen Lane. So you might want to give that some consideration in your deliberation. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Pete. Susie?
See, I think I'm unmuted, aren't I? You can hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. At one point, Larry Turner and I bought signs that stated local traffic only on Courts Lane because it's it's only 15 feet wide and we get a lot of people that don't go all the way down to First and turn to go over Juanita. Instead, they turn on Second and come through and cause a lot of traffic on Courts Lane. And Larry Turner put them up. We paid for them together. We didn't really think it was a big deal, but the town people or the town board or whoever took them down, and we still have the signs in Larry's garage. I just wondered if there's any chance we would be allowed to put those up at River. I mean, yeah. No, State Street where you would turn on Second, and also down on First Street where at the bottom of Courts Lane, if that would be something you guys could discuss. That's all.
What I would ask Susie, if you would just send that in writing to Sarah, and we can get it on the next agenda,
Okay, sounds good.
all right?
And we already have the signs, so you wouldn't have to be going to any expense for that. Thank you. I will put that in writing. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Got anybody else? Nope, okay. So we have a recommendation for a limit of $100. If we'll get, excuse me, if we'll get the wording that we prefer to Sarah, and then she can put it together and send it out. Board members can get it figured out and we can get this moving. All right, we'll move on then. Item 5-4, discuss with possible action the awarding of a bid for ditch work within the town of Pitkin. Sarah? Yes, yep.
Okay,
So we have 3 bids, right?
yes, we
Okay.
have bid number 1 from Jake, it looks like.
From who?
Jake,
Jake, that's what it says.
this says Jake. We'll find out when we open it. Okay, so this is from Varnell LLC to the town of Pitkin. Varnell LLC puts in a bid to the town of Pitkin for irrigation ditch cleanout of up to 1,300 feet and hauling off the dirt within Pitkin city limits for a total price of $4,998.67. Varnell LLC will not dig within 36 inches of marked utilities. So that's bid number 1.
Could you repeat that amount again, please, Sarah?
Yes, so the amount, again, is $4,998.67. It's just a second piece of paper, public, so it wouldn't be seen through the envelope. Bid number 2. I can't read it's just initial, so let me get this open here. I should have brought a letter opener, my apologies. Creekside Angling and Environmental. Here for the town of Pitkin. This gentleman's name is Chris. And it says clean ditch marked and reviewed with Ed. And approximately 200 additional feet identified during site visit. Disposal of, it says spoil, it might mean soil, I'm not sure.
No, it's spoiled. That's right.
Okay, disposal of spoil, 1.5 to 2 days, amount $3,800. So again, this is Creekside Angling and Environmental, $3,800. We have a third bid. This one is from Gunnison Valley Excavation. Project overview, complete ditch work throughout the town of Pitkin, which was outlined during a walkthrough with NP and also on 5/16. excavator and operator to clean up and redefine ditches, driver and 14K dump trailer, 14K pound dump trailer to follow and haul waste material to be dumped. Total $4,800. So GVE, 4,800.
Mayor, for clarity and transparency. Sarah had asked, I think.
Just state your name
Oh,
again.
that'd be
Sorry.
something. Sorry, I'll get it eventually. I was asked to take anybody that bid on the project around to show them. Jesse and I had gone around prior to that week, to identify the ditches that he had seen. We identified the ditches. I gave each of the people that I took around the sheets with specific addresses. The original linear feet that Jesse and I had come up with is 1,100 feet. When I took the first group around, which was Jake Varnell and Chris from Creekside, as I was driving around, some of the snow had melted out that Jesse and I, or that was in the ditches when Jesse and I went around. So I added an additional 200 feet to a total of 1,300 feet that we marked, and those are marked with marking paint in the ditches. But in the ad or what was shown in Gunnison Times said that it was mandatory that the site review was done. I did do a site review with all three.
All right, good. Any other questions from the board?
Yes, can you review, I didn't write those down, the numbers again, please?
Sure. So the first is Varnell LLC, $4,998.67. The second was Creekside Angling and Environmental. This is out of Gunnison. $3,800. The third is Gunnison Valley Excavation, $4,800.
Thank you.
This is Tom Newman. I have a question for Pitkin also down here. So as you tour these different individuals or persons around, so I guess my question is your impression of, this is kind of a loaded question, but your impression of those that you took around to see.
That's,
My impression of all three was all three could get the job done in a timely fashion. All three were very professional, and when I was showing them, taking them around, I would hire any one of them.
Thank you.
when you're showing them around, did you talk about time frames at all, or?
Yes, it's stated in the posting that we would decide tonight as a board. We would award the bid, and then they had between tomorrow and June 3rd to complete the work.
June 3rd.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what it says in the post.
Okay. And did they all state that in their bids? That the work would be completed by June 3rd? Or did any of them state that? No?
No, the only person that made mention of a time frame was Creekside Angling and Environmental, who suggested that it was a 1.5 to 2 day job.
Okay.
But nobody made mention of the due date for completion.
When you're doing the walk around, did you guys talk about locates or utilities, any of that?
No. So I walked my ditch out in front of the old cafe I'm working on, which will probably never be a cafe. But anyway, I noticed some orange paint. Is there some significance to this orange paint? Because I didn't wander all over town.
No, the orange paint is where Jesse and I went around and he added his notes, so I took his notes. I made my own notes and I typed it out and to make sure I knew where I was going to take them and marked out with the beginning of the ditch with, let's say, a C where it'd go across and then where it would end. And that's what's in the notes that I gave each of them. So in your example of the restaurant, if I remember correctly, you have a concrete section.
Yes.
There, so the work would start after the concrete section. And I believe goes down, in your case, to the pump by Charlie McDaniel's house. Just clean that up and shrink. But not to interfere with the concrete.
Jared?
Well, so I have one more, this is Tom, I have one more question. So is this a per foot bid in the final analysis, or is this, kind of no matter what? In other words, my question is, if I should decide to go out and clean that ditch for that entire block, which I could do by hand, 4 or 5 hours maybe, would that make a difference on the bid?
Well, read the way all three of them were stated. It wasn't a per foot bid, was it?
No,
Okay.
It was really kind of for the total of what,
the total job, there was,
Yeah.
well, no, so Marnell LLC said up to 1,300 feet would be for their bid. Creekside Angling and Environmental did say, the ditch that's marked and reviewed and approximately 200 additional feet. So they do kind of make mention to it, but it doesn't indicate here. GDE did not say anything. They didn't indicate that was necessarily how they calculated their bids, but two did make mention of the approximate number of feet that were identified.
Thank you.
but the bids themselves weren't really based on it per foot.
No,
It was based on walking it with
I did-
you guys and doing what all was described.
I did the walk around with them. I told them what I had done is marked off the locations. That's what we were looking at. And then I ran a tape measure on it to give them an approximate
Right.
lineage.
Okay. And maybe that's where Creekside came up with the additional 200
It
was
is-
between the 11 and 13 that
It
you,
is, because when we were looking at it, its original totals 1,100. And then I saw where the snow had melted out. And I said, no, that needs to be cleaned out. We didn't see that before.
okay.
Roughly 2.
So, Jared,
So, can you clarify, Sarah, the verbiage on where they're hauling the soil?
well, I think that was going to be basically determined by us. Did you point out anywhere? Or,
All three did ask. And I believe when Jess and I were talking about it, we talked about the bottom of 9th Street. But really,
okay,
So it's not out of town.
it's
not out.
It's not out of, and I thank you for that clarification. I did say it would not be out of town.
Thank you.
any other board discussion? Public comments?
Susie may have a public comment.
Susan, do you have a comment?
That might be from the last.
Okay,
Sorry, I was just trying to tell you, I forgot to take my hand down, I think. Yeah, I was muted. Okay, bye.
all right. Well, oh, we do have public comment now. Oh. Sound like it's time.
Jake Schulberg, Pitkin. I know all the people, and I think they all did a great job. One thing I was curious about, last year was our first time in a long time to do significant ditch cleaning. And I was wondering, I don't expect a perfect number, but I was trying to compare the bids for this year to last year, the feet and the total cost for last year. Last year was semi-volunteer based. So I was just trying to compare the volunteer mentality that we had last year and the cost of that compared to the more stringent bidding, so that we can, I think it's good for the public to understand where our tax dollars are going. Thank you.
Sarah, do you have that right there? If not, I think I have it.
Yeah, if you have it, probably you're a little quicker than I am on it.
What I see is for the ditches for 2023, the expenses, the total expenses were $6,612.50. Is that what you?
Yes,
But did that include culverts?
no, that was
Cleaning ditches? Just
for equipment rental only. So that does not include culverts, freight for culverts, volunteer meals, none of that was included. That was just equipment rental.
Do we know how many feet?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Do we know how many feet? Linear feet
That were-
cleaned out?
I don't know unless somebody kept track of it that was involved. $6,612.50. And last year, we're pretty much, was everything cleaned last year or not? So, okay,
I think it's 7 blocks.
okay.
We didn't.
So 7 blocks would be roughly 2,800 feet. Roughly
Maybe twice the footage of this year.
as this year. Okay,
That's a guess.
okay. Any other public comments? Any other questions from the board?
I guess my problem is, to me, it's not clear exactly what work will be done. And we don't have a contract. So, I mean, there's no one to supervise. How do we know the work is done? The whole thing is just too vague.
That it? So,
That's
Okay.
it, yeah.
well, I guess where I would start off with that is, sounded like Ed, you actually marked out pretty much what needed to be done, correct?
And Mark, I'll just give an example. And each one of these is spelled out this way. So cleaning out the culvert, 610 Main Street for Lowell property, and 608 Main Street for Ross property. Clean out between the culverts, 8 to 10 inches deep, approximately 12 feet long. And each one of those is full.
So I think it is fairly specific, and I think it would be pretty easy for someone, anyone, to go out after the work's done and say, okay, here's the list of what they were supposed to do, and be able to look at the ditch and go, yep, it's been cleaned out, or no, it hadn't.
But who is that someone? You?
You know what? I'll do it. I'll do it.
I mean, that's what I'm trying to.
Well, you know, we can't get a volunteer for a ditch commissioner, and
I understand.
our street commissioner has just resigned. So you know what? I'll step up.
Okay.
So I purposely did it this way.
And I appreciate Ed taking the time to go out, and Jesse helped with that. So I appreciate you guys going out and getting this laid out.
Identify that, purposely laid it out, so that if something happened to hire Jesse between now and when it happens, I think anybody can pick this piece of paper up and figure out.
Right. So
Try to make it simple.
I'll follow up on it. And as far as the contract, I think Sarah is more than competent to get us a contract put together for basically taking what we've got right there and saying, this is what we want done, and we want it by June 3rd. So Jared, you had a comment?
June third doesn't sound like very far off, but also if I recall, and I may be wrong because I didn't help with that last year. But there was some shovel work done too. We had that, all that time. There were several people and they did have shovels. And where, where the backhoe or whatever they used wasn't available. So you might need to see if you can find anybody to help you, Eddie.
So in saying that, that's, I see this is separate from opening the ditches up and cleaning the ditches out by hand, the
Yes.
grass and that kind of stuff. So, I would anticipate for these bulleted items, that's up to the contractor to have that cleaned out. And if they need to do any shovel work by hand, in fact, one of them said part of it, they would have to do it by hand. Because it was easier to do that than try to get a mini X. So, just so everybody's clear. This doesn't mean, in my opinion, this doesn't mean that they come in and clean this out. Clean these locations out and then we can turn the ditch on and water's flowing great. It's still gonna take a crew.
It takes a walk in the ditch.
Right.
That's part of it.
This is Tom with one last inquiry. Was there any indication what size buckets they would be using?
In talking to Jesse before we did it, we kind of decided a 12-inch. Some of those locations look like it could be because of flow, could be 18-inch. So I took it upon myself to say 12 to 18 inches would be acceptable. Don't think we wanted 24 inches on it. In a couple of them, or one of them coming in.
No, and my preference would be the 12-inch, because the wider you get the ditch, then the lower the water is in the ditch, and the more people have to dam it up to try to get a pump to pump out of it. So to me, if we can keep it at 12, that would be a lot better. Other board discussion? Well, if the board is all right with this, then we'll take a vote to go ahead and enter into a contract with,
But yeah, because we kind of need to decide who.
well, we'll have a vote on that first.
Can I make one more point before we vote? Just jot the numbers down real quick. With what was discussed, looked like last year we did approximately 2,800 feet for $6,000. I think we got a good deal last year. Because the minimum this year for 1,200 feet, 1,300 feet is $3,800. So just wanted to make that.
And I think, as we've discussed before, when it comes around to budget time, we're gonna have to look at this and again and see, because next year there may be twice as much footage, or it may be more complicated. And as has been mentioned, this doesn't mean after they do the work, we just go turn the water on and the water flows. So there's gonna be a lot of handwork yet and following the ditches down. So that's something that hopefully a group of people will step up and say, hey, we want to get the ditch water on, and we'll be willing to meet after the ditches are clean and get it going.
Was anything said in the announcement or the proposals about timing? When this is gonna be done?
Well, that's what we're saying. It was stated it has to be done by June 3rd.
Okay, that's what we wanted to know.
Yeah. So. Well, discussion on which bid we want to accept then.
Ed, you, or who? Oh, Jake. I think it was Mr. Schellenberg that made a statement that he knew all three. Have you had work done by all three of those? I am aware of local and good work by Mr. Varnell and of course by Gunnison Valley Excavation. I know them. I know their work,
Right.
but I'm not familiar with the creek side.
I think Jake can speak to that, I believe.
I've worked done by all of that. Creekside I have not, but I'm familiar with him out of Gunnison. He's a middle school teacher, also. I mean, he's a great guy. I can't speak for his work necessarily, but I think he does a great job. He's been doing that for a long time, so. And I do know he's your lowest bid. I think he's a nice guy.
And I think what we can do is we can ask for some references if that's the way we go.
Was that the low bid?
That was a low bid, was Creekside, yes. So other board discussion?
One thing I would like to do is drag this out and further the ditches should be on.
Yes.
The ditches are for fire prevention. They should be on. So I don't want to call this out any further than we need to. I don't know, if I might have been the one that said in talking with all three of them, I would hire any one of the three and talking to them. But we've seen what was done last year in the ditches, which was quite well. We've seen what Gunnison Excavation does in snow plowing, which is quite well. So we have a history with both of those.
All right, other discussion?
Y'all plan on shutting the water? I mean, turn it.
When are we gonna turn the water on? Well, it's somewhat dependent on when these get clean. We've got it supposed to be done by June the 3rd, so I'm anticipating it'll probably be sometime right after June the 3rd.
And you didn't have
Wait a minute, before we.
Yeah.
If you want to speak, you're gonna need to step up to the podium, please.
Hello, this is Bob Taylor. So during our construction phase, we have basically, covered that ditch. So we just need some warning before the water gets turned on, or was some of that bid including in front of the hotel?
It did not include in front of the hotel on, I believe it's either side. Because the one side where the septic is, under the understanding that that's gonna be a culvert put in. And then the other side, I believe, is gonna be running water in some section.
Who, I didn't know anything about a culvert. Who told me that? Oh, Jesse.
Just here, and I'd like to witness that. I was contacted by Phil and Todd that they want 2 culverts on the mountainside of Main Street where it crosses the ditch that goes under the blacktop. So that make sure there's no seepage going from the ditch into the septic line that goes under Main Street. And on the creek side of Main Street, they want 4 culverts to line that ditch, make sure that the leach field and that ditch under the highway is protected. And those culverts are here. And I priced them out of Oklahoma and they're delivered in here.
So I've already paid for them?
No. And that price is not determined. It will range somewhere between $400 and $620 a piece. 400 is a lot closer.
So just one quick,
Needs to prove that expense.
so Jesse, did you say the culverts are already here? Is that what I heard?
5 of them are here and the other 5 that I'm looking for another location for, and another location will be here very promptly. But if he needs all 6 of them tomorrow, they're available.
There you go, Bob.
Oh, thank you. That's all I have.
And just clarify that, because that's the work you did. You'll be responsible for getting those installed and forward.
Donate something to the cause.
I don't believe so on that.
Can we do a tip bond on that?
You need to talk to Phil and Todd about that probably.
Hi, Jody Morris. We own property on State and River Street. Back to the ditch cleaning. As a entrepreneur ourselves, business owner, excavation company ourselves. I personally, even though budgets, we all know budgets, that's the most important thing we're here about. is how we spend our money. But for me personally, as a property owner in town, because there's work that will go past getting out of the ditches, as you said, Mr. Balch, that people will have to volunteer, or another people will have to arrive to finish out maybe some cleaning before the water gets turned on. Is that correct?
So in the past, the way it's always worked is there was a crew of people that start up, they open the head gate, the water starts coming down and you chase the water all the way down through town. You clean out leaves, you clean out whatever, and we try to keep the water flowing all the way out.
Okay,
So, and it's always been a volunteer group in the
Right.
past.
that's what I understand. So for me personally, not that my opinion counts when I put it out there, I would personally want to see someone who has a vested interest in that is going to be here on the premises for the days following the initial ditch work. So I know Gunnison Excavation does a lot of work for us anyway for winter snow plowing, but I know also that Chad Barnell is here. Barnell LLC, his equipment is here in case there's a problem, and as Ed has said, it's important that these get turned on right, as soon as possible to ensure that the security of our properties. I would go for Barnell or for Gunnison Excavation just simply because we know them. They're reliable equipment. In Barnell's case, the equipment is right here. If there's a problem, then we can kind of escalate that to make sure they get turned on promptly. So anyway, makes sense.
All right, thanks. Other public comments? Jake?
Not that it matters. Barnell Electric can start tomorrow.
Do you lower your price?
What starts tomorrow?
They could start tomorrow.
Oh.
Other public comments? Is there anybody on the Zoom that has a comment? Well, just to go back over, and Sarah, if you would make sure that I get these numbers right, but the bid from Jake and Chad was for $4,998.57. Creekside was $3,800, and Gunnison Valley Excavation was $4,800. So we have roughly a little over $1,000 difference between Creekside and GVE, and we have a $1,100, almost $1,200 difference between Creekside and Jake and Chad's bid. So it's been brought up. There's concern about Creekside, if they would do a good job or not. Ed, you seem like you got a pretty good feel for them when they were just looking at it. And I think Jake mentioned that they've actually been doing this work for a long time. Is that right? Is that what you mentioned? That Creekside's been doing this for a long time?
Oh.
Excavation. Okay, well, and so back to the board.
So I will say that Chris was great to talk to. Again, I don't know what his work's like. That's, I think, a good
I
thing.
did, I can hear.
I'm sorry. Chris was very good to talk to, not seen any of his work, so I can't speak for that. I do like the idea of both Chris from Creekside and Jim from Gunnison Valley said they would have to bring their equipment up to town. I personally, I like the idea of being right here. We start the ditches and we have an issue. We have some equipment here. If we were to offer it to the contract department, if we offer it to Gunnison Valley or Creekside, when we open the ditches and there's a flow issue, we're on. So just
All right. Other board comments?
Mr. Mayor. I don't know how much you want to take this into consideration, but only, and it's the top bid, but it's the only company that pays taxes in this town. Just saying.
All right.
I think maybe another consideration, we've had pretty good service for 2 years in snow plowing in Gunnison Excavation. And I know, because a bunch of us were involved with getting that started, and they were a new company. And there was some real concern about, making sure that they can keep going and with the equipment and whatnot. And so I guess I'm kind of leaning towards that to, because they've been a good contractor working for us with the snow plowing, and, to have them do this as well, I think maintains a good relationship.
All right,
I think I agree with that also.
one thing to consider too with both Creekside and Gunnison Valley is they've got mobilization cost that they've got into this bid. So that's a little something to consider too, but. And I believe we have 10,000, is that correct, Sarah, in the ditch budget for this year?
Yes.
So all three bids would fit within the budget. I don't know if we have any other projects lined up for ditches. Did you have anything project wise you had identified needed to get done? Okay. So, well, any other board discussion?
How about an opportunity for River Street ditch? This gentleman would like that, put in your agenda.
John and I have talked about that before. He just needs to convince somebody upstream.
It would be wonderful. But I'm surprised the fire department hasn't been pushing on our existing ditches plus that.
So, all right. Well,
You want a motion?
I'll have a motion then. I would entertain a motion to accept one of these three bids.
I will move to accept the bid from Gunnison Valley Excavation.
All right. Do we have a second?
This is Tom, and yes, for the reasons stated regarding track record and working relationship and future stuff. I'm inclined to second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second to accept the bid from Gunnison Valley Excavation for $4,800. In their bid, did they state the date also, or they did?
They did not state the date, but I will say it was in the RFP, and I know that Mr. Payne also reviewed that with each of the applicants.
Okay. So that's correct, right, Ed? You did verify with all three of them that you wanted it done by June 3rd.
What I did is took a picture of the newspaper, showed it to all three.
Okay, so they've got it. That's good. All right. So we have a motion and a second to accept the bid from Gunnison Valley Excavation for $4,800. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
No.
So I have a count of 3-2. Is that correct? All right. If you would get a contract put together, Sarah, and if you want to send it to the board for review before you send it to them, and then we'll let them know if they would verify when they can get started for us.
Yes.
All right. Moving on. Item 5-5. Discuss with possible action the adopting of the ordinance 2024-5, the temporary occupancy of recreational vehicles on private property. So I believe all the board members should have received a copy of the draft ordinance. How many pages was that?
It's,
Page and a half.
oh, yeah, I can read it. It's two. I
Okay,
can do 2 pages.
it's online though, right?
It is.
You don't have a computer? Okay,
Get one.
all right, Sarah, if you'd read it then.
An ordinance of the town of Pitkin, Colorado, regulating the occupancy of recreational vehicles used for temporary residency, visitation, construction, and various other purposes within the boundaries of the town. The town of Pitkin, Colorado, ordinance 5, series 2024. Temporary occupancy of recreational vehicles on private property. Section A, definitions. For the purpose of this ordinance, camping trailer, physical trailer, motorhome, recreational park trailer, recreational vehicle, travel trailer, and truck camper, and any other description that falls under this guideline shall have the same meanings as defined in CRS 2432-9002 and shall be collectively referred to as recreational vehicles or RVs. For the purposes of this ordinance, camp means to reside or dwell temporarily in a place with shelter and conduct activities of daily living such as eating or sleeping in such place. But the term does not include napping during the day or picnicking. The term shelter includes without limitation any cover or protection from the elements other than clothing. The phrase during the day means from 1 hour after sunrise until sunset. B, utilization of private property by RVs with owner's permission. Property owners may utilize an RV as a guest house on their property with an approved certified OWTS on the property for up to 30 days in any calendar year and or consecutive 12-month period. Property owners may not allow the utilization of RVs as guest house on any property not containing an OWTS. No person or persons shall occupy a camper, trailer, or recreational vehicle or camp anywhere within the limits of the town of Pitkin with or without changing locations within the town unless said camper, trailer, or recreational vehicle is located in an authorized and approved park. Visitors to Pitkin residents are exempt from these provisions in accordance with the above OWTS requirement for a period of 30 days in any consecutive 12-month period or calendar year period unless otherwise approved by the Board of Trustees of the town of Pitkin. C, property owners residing on their own property in RVs while constructing a dwelling. Property owners who locate an RV on their property while building a dwelling on such property must have an approved certified OWTS installed before occupying the RV. Such persons shall obtain a permit from the town clerk and pay an annual registration fee as determined by resolution of the town board of trustees. Such property must conform to square foot area dimensions for a single-family dwelling under the town of Pitkin zoning code and have a valid building permit issued. The RV used for a dwelling under this exception must be connected to the approved certified OWTS, which system must be designed to protect from spillage when the RV is not connected. All appropriate utilities and fees must be paid while dwelling in an RV under this exception. Where water and sewer services are not available, the property owner must furnish the town evidence that he or she is legally obtaining water and is legally disposing of gray and black water in accordance with the rules and regulations of the Colorado Department of Health and Environment. Any necessary line extension shall be installed and paid by the owner. Such person shall likewise be responsible for monthly water and sewer fees, if any. A permit for residence must be obtained in the same manner provided in paragraph 1 at the time such owner procures a building permit from the town. Such owner shall demonstrate significant progress in construction during the first 30 days of occupancy to continue eligibility of residents for the RV for purposes of this paragraph. D, no RV shall be permanently placed, nor have any skirting installed for any purposes other than described in this section. E, no RV shall be placed in a public right-of-way, or it shall be subject to immediate removal by way of towing at owner's expense. F, Town of Pitkin Ordinance 3, Series 2013 is hereby repealed in its entirety. The town board finds that this ordinance is necessary to the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, and safety, and shall take effect and be enforced from and after the final publication of this ordinance.
All right. Board discussion.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, Ed Pinalto. My first question is, does an ordinance, and maybe this is for the town attorney, does an ordinance such as this have to go before a public hearing and be posted and then discussed in the public hearing?
I believe at the attorney's suggestion, the wording at the bottom in bold, where it says the town board finds that this ordinance is necessary to the immediate preservation. I believe that addresses that.
Okay, so then my second question then would be, what really then is the issue that has brought this up, and is it going to resolve that issue? So first of all, what's the issue that's causing us to want to repeal the old camping ordinance and enact this ordinance?
Well, there's been quite a bit of discussion in the past, I believe, about the camping ordinance. And if it was, what was needed to protect town of Pitkin. And so I think that's, why this was drafted. I believe, quite a bit of the wording came from our attorney to help bolster the existing ordinance. Sarah, do you have any specifics between the two? Or not?
Not prepared. If you have specific questions, I can easily pull up the other ordinance.
And I don't have the other ordinance in front of me right now, but if you got some questions between the two.
But I've got a lot of questions, not necessarily between the two.
What's the immediate thing with it?
Would you let the trustees speak, please? Go ahead, Ed.
So I guess my first question, I don't know that that's been clearly answered, is what's the root cause of why we're enacting a new ordinance? It goes with my second question, though, is does this new ordinance solve that problem? And I can't say, I don't know what the problem sure is, other than it's been discussed in the past and we have an issue with it. So I don't know if this is going to solve the initial reason for the ordinance or not. But then my third question that follows that up is this ordinance going to create more harm to the town than what we currently have? Pardon me. You want me to continue with the questions?
No, since you brought it up, you said that you're concerned about if it would bring more harm to the town. I would like for you to define that.
Well, it's going to be with questions and statements, what's in here. So first off, when I look at this ordinance under B, utilization of private property by RVs without permission, it states for up to 30 days in any calendar year, if it's on an approved property with an approved certified OWTS system. So 30 days in a calendar year. One first thing that I thought of when I looked at it is in Pitkin, if I look at the needs of Pitkin, one of the huge needs of Pitkin is snow removal in the winter. We get snow removal based upon income from sales tax revenue. In Pitkin, we have 3 big properties, or main businesses, I should say, that drive that sales tax revenue to Pitkin. All 3 properties have, or 3 businesses, excuse me, have people that work for them that may need to stay in an RV because we don't have a lot of other accommodations for workers in this town. So the question is, we're going to allow 30 days. Why not 120 days? That'd be more reasonable for these summer workers, for people that are coming in to help supporting our sales tax revenue for the need of this town, which is snow removal. That's one of the large needs. So I question why only 30 days? Because we are taking one whole group of people out of the picture that can only be here 30 days. That, in my opinion, is going to harm the town more than this ordinance is going to help it. I go down to the next paragraph where we talk about visitors to Pitkin residents are exempt from these provisions in accordance with the OWTS requirement for a period of 30 days and consecutive 12 months, unless otherwise approved by the Board of Trustees. So the Board of Trustees, I guess, visitors to Pitkin residents are exempt from these provisions. I'm not so sure what that means.
The way I would understand it is you as a resident, and you had someone bring an RV or you had an RV sitting there, then visitor to your residence, as long as the connection to the OWTS, I think that's one of the important things that we're trying to address here, is to make sure that the OWTS is designed to accommodate the additional load from the RV. And then it says for a period of 30 days. And I think we can certainly have a discussion about the 120 days. I think you bring up a good point that do we need to look at for labor force in Pitkin? Is that something that's a viable option?
In that 30 days that it's stated throughout the ordinance or whatever the time period is, how are we going to track that? Are we going to have a quote camp host go around town every day to look at every camper that comes in and says, okay, people are staying in this camper overnight? You might have a resident in any one of the situations. You might have a resident that has a visitor, it's their camper there, or maybe they're building their own house, whatever it might be. They have their camper located there, but maybe they only come in on weekends. Are we saying that 30 consecutive days that the camper's sitting there? Or just the days that they're staying in the camper? I don't know how we're gonna monitor that.
It's probably the same problem we have with monitoring a lot of other stuff in this town.
I agree, and we have a lot of problems.
And so then it begs the question is, do we have an ordinance at all? Do we have any ordinances? Because if we just say, you know what, we're not gonna have an ordinance because we don't see any way to enforce it, then why do we have a zoning code? Why do we have anything?
I would agree with that statement, Mr. Mayor. Why create a new ordinance? If there's a need for the new ordinance, okay, maybe we need a new ordinance. But either we can't or we don't enforce the ordinances that we currently have. We've got parking on town property that's a nuisance, or continual trespassing, is what the town attorney from before said. We're not addressing it. So I guess my question there is, why don't we enforce the ordinances we have now before we start creating new ones that may create more harm than they're actually solving? There's some other points in it, I guess, that aren't with harming the town, but I have questions about it, the way it's worded. So
Well, if you have other questions, you bring them forward. That's
okay. So under, I guess, section C of property owners residing on their own property, we've got a statement in there that says such person shall obtain a permit from the town clerk and pay an annual registration as determined by resolution of the town board of trustees. Or we enact an ordinance that talks about a permit fee and an annual registration fee. We need to have those processes put in place before we implement the ordinance, or we have that available so it gets implemented at the same time. We can't approve an ordinance and have steps in it that people can't do.
the good part is with the fee, we can put that in the fee schedule, so we don't have to put that into the ordinance.
I agree, it doesn't have to be in the ordinance, but we've got to have that discussion up front as to what is the fee gonna be, what's the permit gonna look like, and then it can be put in fee schedule. I understand that. But I think it's wrong to approve an ordinance and then discuss what the fee might be. When I go over to section 2 on the second page, under C, there's a phrase there that says all appropriate utilities and fees must be paid while dwelling in an RV. What are the appropriate utilities for the town of Pitkin?
Well, what I would guess is if the attorney drafted some of this, it probably came from some other resolutions or ordinances. And that information or that statement was probably put in there, grouped together utilities and fees. So at this time, it may not apply to town of Pitkin, but in the future it could. So
Yeah, and if I could say something, I understand that that residences are on wells and, every property has an OWTS and that there isn't at the moment, a water and or sewer utility. I grappled with that language, but at the end of the day, if it's not applicable or appropriate, then it won't be charged. But as the mayor said, I think it's appropriate to have something that just at least contemplates the fact that there might be some utility at a future date that is in there. And again, I don't have a dog in the fight for the camping ordinance. I was asked to draft this based on the parameters of, previous discussions from the board. It is of course up to the board to pass or deny the ordinance. But I also will address, there are basic health, safety, and welfare codes that just, quite frankly, just aren't contemplated by the current ordinances for camping. And the issue becomes, and right now it's fine in Pitkin, I understand, I've been there, and it's just a beautiful community, and you don't have any issues, any major issues at least. But if you don't address the fact that certain people are going to want to live in RVs, you're very quickly going to have unrated RVs sitting on properties without proper sewage and water, and that don't have the appropriate snow load by Colorado law, and it's going to become a dangerous condition for certain people that are trying to even make a living there. And of course, that's not the point. Like, what we want is people to be able to safely live in the town and work. And so this is an attempt to regulate, for the welfare and safety of the entire town, not just, this has not been tailored or drafted for any particular individual or issue, as was asked earlier in the meeting. So I just wanted to be clear, like, this is as simple as it gets. I have 20-page examples of camping ordinances that I've written for other municipalities that do get into the minutia. I was trying to make it as simple as possible for the board, to keep some sort of regulation over people staying in campers on private property. So in pending your questions, I don't want to talk it to death, but I did want to answer those certain points.
all right, thanks, Clay. And I think that's, when you look at this draft ordinance, I think that's the primary focus is about health and safety. That's why OWTS is in there multiple times, because there's concern in the town of Pitkin that it's been noticed that there are RVs that are just discharging. Not into an OWTS, they're just discharging. And whether it's gray water or black water, that's not legal. So I think that's probably the primary focus of this ordinance, is try to address the health and safety issue of those things.
And then, but when I look at some of the restrictive parts of the ordinance, not sure if we're not being too restrictive on some of it. I'll go a little bit further on my concerns. Questions is section B. Section B, it states in the second paragraph, an authorized and approved park. What is an authorized and approved park in the town of Pitkin? I've not seen that anywhere in any other ordinance or anything else. So again, it's something else I think we need to have we find to determine that? You know, how does someone become an authorized and approved partner? What is an authorized?
What I would say is they would apply to the town of Pitkin. And there again, I think this is something that we're looking at for the future. Maybe not right now. Try to address that if there's a park. These are the regulations that are gonna affect that.
So don't we want to have, if we're going to implement this ordinance, don't we want to have that defined as what an authorized and approved park is, and how do you become authorized and approved? I'm going to throw it out there.
Well, Miss-
Go ahead.
That's a good point. I'm sorry, sir, to interrupt you. I was trying to wait for a pause, but I understand the sentiment. Well, I understand the logic that you don't want to include things in an ordinance that aren't otherwise encapsulated in other parts of the code. This is the reason, again, the reason that is in there was intentional, and that's because as I am aware, there is no RV or camping parks within the town, and that's something that the town might want to consider, whether that be long-term camping, utility sort of thing, or visitors who want to bring their RV and camp just for a few days. That's up to the town, however they want to do that. What I try to do when I build an ordinance is, and that's the same reason that you'll see that reference to the fee schedule. You don't have to have a fee to refer to a fee schedule. The problem becomes when you put too many details into an ordinance, you end up changing the ordinance multiple times as everything else changes around it. So it's better to anticipate and reference the generalities of what the ordinance could entail. And so in this case, if there is a future for a trailer recreational camping park in the future, you want to at least include it so you're not constantly amending and updating the ordinance. Same with the fee schedule. You never want to put in the actual fee in an ordinance, because then you're having to draft an ordinance, pass an ordinance, wait the 30 days, and then get the different fee. So you just refer generally to a fee schedule. If those things don't exist, then they have no teeth in the ordinance itself. And so this is an anticipation of an expanding idea that, of course, the town of Pitkin wants to be able to accommodate RVs, and of course you want to accommodate affordable housing, but there might be in the future a better way to do that, while also taking into consideration the greater ideals of this original ordinance, which is we don't want people camping without proper sewer water, which would affect anybody downhill, downrange, downstream of improper sewage, etc. So that's the idea, just in general.
And actually, Ed, you brought it up, but there's a concern about housing for employees in the town of Pitkin. Maybe that's something that somebody ought to consider as an RV park. And then that would help address that 120-day limit or whatever also.
Someone wants to do.
So,
Yeah, this is Tom. So this is not, let me just back up on a piece of history here. Sometime back, our district forest manager, Matt, came and gave us a speech. And the thing that I remember from all of that talk was the words, "They are coming." Meaning there will be an influx of tourism and people with their toys, people with their trailers, people with their campers, and they're coming this way. And with all of the toys and technology available to now, people can get much farther out than they ever did before. And we have seen some issues with people getting out so far, they got themselves in trouble. But at any rate, so, in response to that, the Forest Service, went through and made some rules regarding, what do they call that camping?
Dispersed.
Dispersed camping, yes. And they designated a couple of campgrounds and some other things. And what that did was that spread out the clutter of campers. And you can only get so many up there, and then you're out of room. And so what we are seeing is that his words are in fact true, and we are seeing an influx of not just the old school people that used to come to Pitkin, but a whole new group. And they come with their toys and their RVs and their campers and such. And so part of this is so that, in my opinion, is so that we have some control over the number that actually wind up landing in Pitkin and where they wind up parking and how they wind up taking care of the things they need to take care of. Now, I too have some questions about this. And I'll just bring up one. One question I have is the concept of dry camping. Now, Wayne Mustaine, Bud, as some of you guys knew him, died this last year, I think. And he came up with his RV and parked right over there by the post office on his property. He's dry camping. He's self-contained. He carries water. He's got sewer. He sits there for 4 or 5 days, and then he pulls out and he goes back home. He came up. He had a fine time sitting on an undeveloped piece of property in Pitkin. And, you know, I have owned a pretty nice RV, and I know that if you're careful, you can sit for 3 weeks and then drive away with it and go to the dump station. So I have questions regarding a whole bunch of stuff that's tied in with that. However, the clutter of RVs does in fact just look like that, clutter. And so this, I think, probably, and when I read this, I thought, man, that's pretty tight. But part of that is if we don't get ahead of the game here, then we're just fair game for everybody that wants to manage a spot. So I see the value in having a more defined ordinance. I have some exceptions I would take with this one. So I'm not going to say it doesn't need some work, but I'm not opposed to the idea at all.
Sarah?
Yeah, without being redundant, all of my notes concur with what has been said already, including, I was just getting ready to talk about the self-contained RVs that take care of themselves, and I don't know how you enforce going and checking all that stuff out. But the time constraint, yeah, this is too restrictive. We've always been told that in Pitkin, there's 9 months of winter and 3 months of company. So I'd hate to see anything less. And we've had some ourselves come in with motorhomes that cost more than some few of the houses in this town. And so I'm not worried about clutter on private property, and visitors that come, they want to park in my, if it's somebody I like. They can park, and if they're self-contained, that's great. They don't have to hook up to our thing. There are some campers in this town that you might not notice a whole lot if you only drive 2 streets, because they're not on the 2 main streets in town. But they have had people and they weren't hooked up. I don't know if they were self-contained or not, but I was told that it works so nice they can just come into the house and shower and those kinds of things. And I don't know that they're hurting the environment any by doing that. I don't know how you full-time position, it looks to me like for the summer, if somebody wanted to be the enforcement for a lot of this. But anyway, my point is I concur really everything that's been said. But I especially think we need to encourage this to be as helpful as we can for housing, for the workforce, for our three major businesses in town. And there may be some others that I'm not aware of. But I enjoy the company that comes and parts, but I can see where we need to be prepared. I'm not opposed to having something, but I don't want it to be very restrictive. And I'm not even sure 120 days is enough. We have people that can stay longer than that.
Right. Chime in on this.
You bet.
And the board, I just want to
Go ahead, Clay.
just real quick. So I think we're talking about a lot of different things. This ordinance is specific to private property within Pitkin. That's the only thing really you can control. What I will say is that I have seen towns that have not contemplated the idea of camping within their town thoroughly enough. And what ends up happening is properties get inundated with mobile temporary housing that becomes non-temporary very quickly. And there's no immediate repercussions of that. And you end up having to go through the state statutes and evictions, and it's over a year process of violations and notices and health and safety violations. So state statute does require that if somebody's living somewhere that they have to have water and sewer. And I know that that's done differently in Pitkin. I'm not immune to this. I live in not as small, but a small mountain community, and I have septic, and I understand the nuances here. What you're talking about, however, when you're talking about affordable housing and trying to house people, the best thing would be to have some sort of like affordable housing park and or camping. So let's say for like Ouray, for example, you can go camp in Ouray and you can dry camp. There's nothing that says you can't. They have a law, however, that says if you're going to allow dry camping, then you also have to have facilities for a dump station. So, it's all geared towards the greater health and safety of the community. And yes, there's no way to monitor every little thing that goes on, but what you don't want is a situation where you have a piece of property that people come and start parking RVs on, and just decide to live there, because it will take years and incredible amount of money to remove them if you don't have the proper camping / ordinances in place for permanent residences and or some sort of timeline. And that's what this is about. Now there's also you can also create variances or camping areas within town that people can come and camp for however long. Over a certain amount of time, though, you definitely want to start thinking about water and sewer and how that's going to work. This is just a draft. This is just an idea, because the original or the existing ordinance just doesn't quite encompass what's needed to protect Pitkin, at least and staffs, in my opinion, from really bad, like worst case scenario sort of situations where people come and just start parking on empty property and refusing to leave because there's nothing we can point to make them leave. And we have to go through state like sewer and water type requirements for living conditions, which are very basic, but also have very significant second and third order effects for the greater community. So this, again, I understand this, like you don't like this ordinance, or if there's certain things that you don't like about it, this is just a suggestion. I provided originally 3 different ordinances, and this is what the staff and I decided was probably closer to what you might be looking for. This might be something this might be a better subject to talk about in a work session, because it sounds like there's a lot of nuances here and a lot of things going on. We might just need to schedule, obviously, I don't think we have consensus on this particular ordinance, but it might be better to just go ahead and reschedule this, table this particular ordinance and reschedule for a work session to really hash out these nuances. This seems like a very important issue for Pitkin, and I think it's something that deserves more attention that can be given to it at this particular meeting.
I would agree. And Ramon?
I agree with the work session. And I want to talk about a couple of things that, you know, are go along with that, and why that we should have one. We did have, the board did have a work session a few months back. And nothing came out of that really, unfortunately, but I know some of us have given a lot of thought about it since then, and I think we should have another one. But let me address a couple of things. First of all, the question was raised, you know, what's wrong with the current ordinance? I see two major problems with it. One is the wording of it tried to do some of what's in here, but didn't cover it. You know, it uses the word improved property. What's that mean? Whereas in here it talks about sewage and OTWS, and that's what is missing from that first ordinance. The second major problem with it, which is a major problem for Pitkin, is enforcement. I don't see any way that Pitkin can enforce the existing camping ordinance. So here's a couple of suggestions, and then I think these can hopefully get some thought going and maybe lead into a work session. Mainly to deal with the enforcement part of it. Given the draft that we have today, first thing I would suggest is changing the 30-day allowance to 14. That sounds pretty damn extreme, I know, but there's a reason for it. At one point, when we were having problems and, you know, the state has taken some strong look at Pitkin with our septic systems, and we ended up having to adopt an OWTS that uses Reg 43, the state regulation, as a basis for it. And the person who handles septic systems or OWTSs in the state of Colorado is Chuck Cousineau. And he was asked by the environmental health official in Pitkin, how far can you stretch these requirements? Basically, you know, the 2 people per bedroom requires so many gallons of this and that and the other thing. And he said that it's over-designed on purpose so that people can have company in, various things like that. And when pushed, he gave the number 14 days of overuse can a current system can handle. That's where I come up with the 14 days is, you know, if we don't have some limit on there that addresses the fact that we do not have a sewer system and we have no one planning on a sewer system, we have to address the problem that we have, which is we have too many OWTSs as it is, and the usage is increasing. Increasing camping, allowing increased camping is only going to add to that. there, it also goes to helping, how do we enforce this? My suggestion is, A, you require a license to camp. For, just like if you go to a campground, you have to make a reservation, pay whatever the campground charges, and it's a daily rate. I think we can implement that. Including with that, you make it mandatory to get this license or reservation, whatever you want to call it, in advance. I just to toss out some numbers and can work on them. I suggest to have a license to camp on private property, $25 a day. That's when someone's grandkids want to come up. They haven't got room for them in the house, put them in a tent outside and solves the problem. But also make basically a penalty fee. If you don't get that license in advance, it's $50 a day, double it. Then you can keep track of it. That's the only way we have. We don't have, and we're not gonna have a camping commissioner, someone to look at it. We've got to set up a way of doing it, if we're going to allow it, a way that it can be kept track of.
If you don't mind. It's already 9 o'clock.
Yeah,
and-
I
and we're
understand
gonna have a
that,
work session, so.
yeah,
Is,
but people,
do you mind holding?
well, I want to get some of this out there so that people can come up with an alternative. They don't like this. And I'm about done. I'm getting close. The other question that needs to be thought about and talked about is camping in Pitkin. Should it be allowed at all? Or should we have campgrounds? What's the point? Think about where we are. We're surrounded by Gunnison National Forest, 1.6 million acres of national forest, just in the Gunnison National Forest. There are camps in Gunnison National Forest. There's 56 campgrounds. 3 of them are within 5 miles of Pitkin. One of them is a 60-second drive from Pitkin. Do we really need camping other than very minor? People can go to a campground if that's what they come here for, is camping. It's not appropriate in a town with residential areas, residential district. It'll get overused if we don't put restrictions on it. And we saw it last year. We'll see it again this year if we don't do anything.
All right. Well, we'll wrap up the discussion for this evening. We will have.
Adjustments on your agenda with the workshop, please, because much of this concerns us. Thank you.
So we're going to table this item 5-5. Okay,
Can I make a motion that we table this item 5-5? Right. Until we can have a work session amongst the Board of Trustees and the public.
And how will we know when this meeting will be held? How will we know when the meeting will happen?
All meetings are noticed.
so I've got a motion on the table.
I second it.
We've got a second. So all in favor of tabling motion 5-5? And we will have a work session and then bring this back to the regular meeting in the future. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So carried. It's tabled. We want to go ahead and get a work session set right now. Recommendations?
We can get an attorney be here.
I'll start with a week from tonight. The 27th.
That's Memorial Day, so that definitely won't work.
Well, we have our regular meetings on holidays.
Well, I don't think it's a good idea to have the work session on that.
The 30th.
Well, I can tell you, I won't be here the 30th, so,
Give us
That's-
dates, then
well-
we can be here.
okay. Let's see. How about, right now, I'd have to look at probably Friday, June the 14th. And if we do that, we'd need to start earlier, right? So. The 14th work,
For me,
Friday.
Sarah?
Friday.
Friday the 14th?
Yes.
Okay, we'll have a work session starting at what time will work for you?
5.
5 o'clock? Okay, that work?
Yeah.
So 5 PM on June the 14th. All right, moving on. Item 5-6. Discuss and possible action on variance requests for 1016 state. We're not down to that yet.
Oh.
We're on 5-6.
So much writing on here.
So Sarah, I believe you did a review of the property. Nat,
Did.
would
yes.
you present that to the board, please?
Sure. So what I can tell the board is that, owner Ed Pianalto requested a 0-foot setback from the upstream side property, downstream side property line, for a garage. This would be on lot 11 of block 8. The drip line of the roof would be on the property line, and then the actual wall of the building would be approximately 1 foot from the property line. And he also noted in his application that the irrigation ditch on lot 12, which is not his property, runs parallel to the property line. So this would place the edge of the garage building he's requesting approximately 6.5 feet from the center of this irrigation ditch. So I visited the property with Mr. Pianalto, and we walked the whole property, and I can verify that all the measurements that he included in his application were accurate. And so I believe that based on the site plan that he presented, that is a reliable site plan from which the board can draw conclusions. We also looked at what might potentially have been other locations for a garage, including the upstream lot, which is lot 9. There were several items, including the septic tank, which would prohibit the placement of a garage in that area. In the main backyard area, that is the location of his leach field. So a garage could not be placed in that area. We looked at lot 11 on the alley side of the road, and there is currently a building there, but in order to place a garage, there is a mature tree that would need to be fully removed in order to make room for a garage at that location. So based on the review of the property, it does appear that if a garage is to be placed on Mr. Pianalto's property, it would need to be in the location that he's requesting.
All right. Ted, you want to address the board, please?
Ed Pinalto, sorry. Ed Pinalto. So I am now speaking on behalf of the property owner, not as a board of trustees, just to be clear for everyone. I am the current property owner to State Street, lots 9, 10, and 11, block 8. There is a site plan that Sarah spoke to, so I'm not going to go through everything in the variance request. I'm sure you got time to read it. But the way the building, the original cabin was located on the property, it is at an angle. It's not parallel to any of the property lines. So the side property, I'll say to lot 9. And if you're looking at the site plan, it denotes lot 8 and lot 12 on the site plan, but those are not my property. Those are the neighboring properties. So lot 9 on the we'll say the upstream side of the cabin, that cabin was placed where the front porch is 10 feet from the property. The back porch is considerably further away, so there's no way to put anything on the right hand side. As Sarah said, with the septic system on lot 9 in that location, cannot put a building on top of the septic system, septic tank. And then the leach field is in the backyard, cuts out that end. Sarah did say on the existing shed that's back there on the back of block 11, not only would I pick out the removal of a tree, but the largest building that could be placed there was a 20-foot building. Otherwise, I'd be extending the garage over the fire ditch, which I don't think would be allowed. So I've asked for that variance to be basically 0 setback off the line to be the drip line, not the foundation on the property line. The foundation would be 1 foot off of the property line. And that allows 6.5 feet to the center of the, actually it allows 7.5 feet from the foundation of the building, center of the irrigation ditch. And lot 12, the irrigation ditch is on lot 12. So it's just a kind of a synopsis of what's going on with the property. You've seen the letter from Chris Nassau, who's the adjacent property owner, saying that he's perfectly fine with it. We also received the email from the property owner behind my property, Gail Richardson, saying that she has no problems with it. Specifically, she can't imagine how anyone could protest the property or the variance on it as well. The town does have a history of allowing 0 variances in the past. So I would ask that you consider 0 variance on this property as well. So I'll stop there unless you have questions that you'd like me to answer.
No on the board, have a question?
Can I ask a question?
You bet you can ask a question.
Okay, this is Tom Gibb. Let me preface my question with a statement that I understand that 9,000 square feet is difficult to get everything you want on it, where you want on it. My question is, can you pull that garage forward to the State Street line, 10 feet off, and still get your size building that you're after up there?
No. And the reason being is where I have the building located right now is 10 feet from the overhead power line. If I bring the building forward, the power line would go directly over the building.
And that's an overhead power line.
And that is an overhead power line.
That a line, is that a line to your house?
That is the line to a pole to the neighbor's house. And to a pole where the neighbor's house, it might be comes off. So it feeds to Lucas Schmidt house. And then it extends on down to the rest of State Street. So it's not just a feed to the feed to my house is on the other side of the camp.
But the line goes in front of your property, basically?
The line goes, if you're looking at the corner of the porch of the cabin, So the corner that's out closest to State Street, the line is higher there, or it's not higher, but the porch roof is lower. So I'm okay on the 10-foot easement, 10 foot from the roof, from the power line. But if I pull that property forward, where I could pull it away 10 feet from the side property line, I would be directly under that power line. Also have the well there, but also keep in mind, my property only goes halfway out to State Street. That's where the property line is. So but if you're familiar with driving down State Street, and you know where my porch is and where the edge of State Street is, my property line is halfway in between them. And that's what's on the diagram. We do have a well out there too that's noted on this one.
Well, I have one last statement. This is regarding the zoning code itself, which says in no case shall a variance be any more than an easing of restrictions. This request is not an easing of a restriction. It is a nullification of any restriction, taking it to zero lot line. You pointed out that this has happened once before in Pitkin, or at least maybe you said we have had a history of doing this in Pitkin, but I was not in on that. That I recall at all. And I don't know if that came to the Board of Trustees or if that was handled by the zoning board itself. So I don't have any history on that. It is nice to have a garage, and it's nice to have workshops, and it's nice to have sheds, and it's difficult to get everything on 9,000 square feet, especially if you've got other mitigating issues. Yeah. So anyway, I'm just in no case, as what our zoning code says, shall a variance be any more than easing of restrictions, then I think that's probably where I lie. Mr. Mayor, may I respond to that, to his question, the comment?
I believe so. It was directed to you.
So I did look a little bit for other setbacks just to see what the history's been. There was a zero setback for a shed placed on 815 State Street, where the property owner of the neighboring or adjacent property gave a letter, and a variance was granted for zero setback on the shed. That's at 815 State Street. 719 Main Street, I believe there was a zero setback variance granted for a leach field to be on 8th Street. That would be more than a zero setback. That'd be a negative setback for it to be placed in State Street. Since it was placed in State Street, that would require the Board of Trustees to make that decision. There's a property at 312 8th Street that has a leach field very close to 8th Street that I believe required an easement as well. And then the property 101 3rd Street, which I believe is yours, Mr. Gibb, that was a stem wall on the back of the property where a zero setback was requested and granted, from what I understand.
Other questions? So a question I have, I'm just looking at the diagram here. So if I'm looking at this correctly, the garage is going to be right next to the irrigation ditch. Is that right?
build the foundation, which is gonna be a monolithic, floor. But the concrete then would be 7.5 feet from the center of the ditch. The ditch is 2 feet wide in that area, so approximately 6.5 feet. I mean, I have no issue with brought up at the zoning board meeting. I have no issue if you want to have the town attorney draw up a held harmless agreement. Deciding a held harmless agreement where the town would not be held liable should that water undercut the ditch and the property. I don't have an issue.
Okay, because that was one of my thoughts, was there were ditches plug up, and especially being in that close proximity. So you're talking about the drip line basically being on the lot line.
Correct.
So your snow shed, I'm guessing looking at it, the snow shed from half of the roof is gonna end up on somebody else's property, right?
Mr. Nassau's property.
Well, it's Mr. Nassau's right now, but if we do look to the future, but the reality is it has to end up on somebody else's property. The snow's gonna slide off the roof, and it's either in the ditch or on someone else's property. Let's just say the property sells or whatever, and somebody wants to build. And they come and ask for a variance to build right next to the ditch. And your roof sheds onto their building. How would you try to address that? Or do you see that as a problem? Maybe it's not a problem.
I don't see it as big as a problem as it's trying to be made. In that if the ditch for my building is 7.5 feet from the foundation, in all honesty, I can't see anybody building any closer to that ditch than even what I'm requesting. So if I go to the other side of the ditch, someone tries to build over there, it's 7.5 feet. Now look at 15 feet between the two buildings. And I know our code, the intent of our code is 20 feet between the buildings or snow shed. I understand that. But with a 15-foot separation, see the snow shed being.
So you wouldn't be opposed to someone building a building there and asking for a variance to build closer to the ditch or whatever. And I guess the way, what I look at is, I don't see all the specs on your garage there, but I don't know what your wall height was gonna be.
8-foot wall.
8-foot wall.
8-foot wall.
So if someone builds a building there on the other property, let's say they do a 12 or 13 or 14-foot wall, it's very possible that their snow could end up on your building. Would you be against a variance if their snow was going to land on your building?
Personally, I don't believe the snow would end on my building, so I wouldn't be opposed.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Mhm.
I didn't quite understand your question about if Nassau sell and somebody buys, why that's our business. Because Mr. Nassau has already said he's okay. And then if he tries to sell it and somebody doesn't like it, well, sorry, Mr. Nassau, we have it in our record. I mean, I don't see where that's our business.
Okay. And what I'm looking at is Ed's asking for a variance. And if somebody comes to a future board, may not even be us, comes to a future board and says, hey, I want to build and I want a variance. I want to build closer to the ditch. And there's a very possible that the snow off of that roof could end up on Ed's property. I'm just throwing it out there just as a consideration, if it's even been thought about. So.
And when Jerry asked, why is that our business? That's why I asked for this basically to come to this board. Because the ditch is our business. And so I think, it's really unfortunate that we don't have a volunteer ditch commissioner. Because then we would have someone with some knowledge and concern about what's happening with and adjacent to the ditches. Just looking at this map, it's pretty obvious the ditch was moved, but I don't remember the board ever discussing it. And if someone like Eddie's talking about wants to build right next to the ditch across from that garage, how is it going to be maintained? That's why it's our concern is because of that ditch. And water is important. It's important, especially in the state of Colorado. And water law, that there's more water attorneys in Colorado than the rest of the country put together.
Not one bit surprised. However, I'm all about health and safety, and there's no OWTS, nothing like that to have to worry about the water being contaminated because of this. So I'm not thinking we're jeopardizing that ditch for health and safety.
Well, so let me just throw this out.
Go ahead.
We allow Ed the variance and he builds right on next to the ditch, basically. Somebody else builds, whether it's Chris or whoever, builds a property right next to the ditch. And we need to get an excavator in there to clear it out. We don't have any access then.
I think we're borrowing trouble here, and I like us to watch after our town, but I can't imagine somebody wanting to build that close to the ditch if they buy whatever property that is that Nassau's have there. Yeah, I guess he has that, he has all that. But I just think we're digging a hole where we don't need to go.
Well, having worked in the city of Gunnison and had to do work on the irrigation ditch and had to do it between houses and et cetera, it can be a problem. So I've been there and experienced it.
So when that person buys Nassau's property, or if Chris wants to build his house, or I don't know what he's going to do with it, but if he wanted to build a house next to that ditch, then we could say, no, we cannot allow this variance for you to be that close to the ditch because we have to get an excavator in there maybe.
Okay, so we're gonna tell that property owner no. But we're gonna consider telling Ed yes.
Well, yes, because we don't even know that that's going to happen. But if it did, the town, whoever's on the town council could address it at that time. So I don't see it as a roadblock at this time. Thank you.
In regard to the discussion we had earlier about hiring a contractor to clean out the ditches, I have to ask the question is, just from the shape of the building, I assume that the roof's going to slope towards the ditch, at least half of it, or some portion of it. Is that going to cause more, cave-ins on the sides or debris or whatever to the ditch? I don't know, but that's a concern, because we have a responsibility for these ditches. And, that's why, the irrigation ditches that the ranchers have are no different from our water right and the ditch right, which means a 25-foot easement on each side. And, I think that we need to consider anything like this. Is it going to affect our operation, the cost, the flow, anything else of that ditch? Beyond that, I'm not concerned about the setback issue. I'm concerned about, as a member of this board, I'm concerned about the ditch, and is it going to affect it? Maybe you would know more because you know,
Well,
past
that's-
work. I don't.
I mean, you brought up about the easement. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, it's described. If there's an irrigation ditch, there's access to that ditch. So if you build there, then that definitely restricts the access on that side of the ditch.
If I might add on that ditch, if anybody's looked at that ditch is over 2 feet deep. And I've traveled now all the ditches in this town. It is the deepest ditch in the town of Pitkin. So it will be years and years down the road before that ditch needs to be cleaned down. Consideration.
Other board members? Anything else? All right, we'll open it up to the public.
Did the Board of Trustees not get a recommendation from the zoning board of adjustments?
I believe we did, yes.
You pay any attention to it?
I guess my question would be, why didn't the zoning board just vote on it to approve it?
I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because we wanted added to the variance request, a liability phrase for the town of Pitkin. And that ditch, even if another building is built the same distance from the ditch as this proposed garage, that's gonna give you approximately 14 feet wide. I don't know that many excavator that's 14 foot wide, if you ever have to get in there. And it's only 20 feet. I think we're beating it up and we're withholding the possibility for a person who has allowed our fire ditch to go through his property for decades. And we're holding him at large because something might maybe possibly sometime happen. I say move right on, get it approved and get it built and let them start paying taxes on it. Thank you.
All right,
That's what it's on.
Chris?
So sounds like the holdup here is the location of the ditch. Nothing else.
That's a concern.
That's what Mr. Reed just covered. My suggestion would be move the ditch off my property, put it in town right away. Then that problem goes away.
Amen.
All
I
right,
believe there's an easement for the town to run the ditch across that piece of property. So if the ditch is what's holding up for making a decision about approving this variance, move the ditch.
all right.
That's all I have.
Any other comment? All right, thanks, Chris.
Corey Nasso. I'll try to be articulate or concise. I'm very good at public speaking, but from what it sounded like tonight, figure out a way to put this not to be offensive. I consider a lot of you friends, but it appears there's no legitimate reason to deny this. There's some personal feelings about it. My opinion is that the board should work to facilitate things with property owners, not to be an impediment. This property isn't going to cause harm to the neighborhood, to the town. It increases property values. This nonsense about the ditch. Sorry, I mean, that's how I'm going to refer to it. And I'm not trying to be offensive. Eddie, you spoke about getting an excavator in there. There are numerous locations. You might know that, but you can't get an excavator in town. And then as Jesse said, it's only 20 foot. So I don't know that I don't know the concerns about the ditch are enough to deny a variance request. Tom, you were talking about easing of, how did you phrase it? Easing of what?
Easing of the.
No more than an easing of restrictions.
And I guess my comment on that would be that how do you delineate what's an easing versus a removal of a restriction? The zoning code doesn't state anything beyond this is not an easing of restriction. So I don't know if I was real articulate about that, but I just wanted to voice my support in you guys passing this variance. Frankly, I just think it's a lot of hoopla and that it's not going to hurt anything in this town. Thank you.
All right, other public comments?
Hi. Hello? Hello?
Just a second.
Can anybody hear me?
Stephen Fisher, I think, is who that is.
Yes, just go ahead and identify yourself, please.
Hi, this is Jim Fisher. I was just wanted to make some quick comments. I've heard a lot of talk tonight about harm to the town, but I haven't really heard anything that would really harm the town. Obviously, and I don't want to go back to the previous meeting, but dumping raw sewage would, but snow on a ditch would do nothing to harm the town. And an excavator is more than capable of cleaning that ditch for that distance. That's all I wanted to say.
All right, thanks. Any other comments on the Zoom? All right. So I'm just going to state it one more time. I guess probably one of my biggest concerns is that the zoning board didn't just go ahead and approve this request. I guess I really don't understand why they didn't, but they didn't. They pushed it to us. So that's where we're at. And so that's all right, Jesse. All right.
We did approve it with your recommendation to add the liability clause.
Right. So,
We need the attorney to do that.
I would be much more upset if the zoning board approved something and we found out it was something they should not have approved. So I appreciate the fact that it was sent to us because we did, as a board, it's my understanding as a town council, we wanted this, is a whole harmless or what is that, indemnification added to that. And I don't think the zoning board had that. I don't think they had the authority to do that. That was my understanding.
okay.
So I thought it would be pretty simple that we could approve it, and if we want to add that as a contingency, the whole harmless or whatever the attorney wants to call that.
Clay, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So yes, it's kind of my understanding that the zoning board pushed this to the town council just over the concern, I guess, about adding this clause about holding them harmless. Would you weigh in on that?
Sure. I mean, I think it's at this level to either adopt according to the zoning board's regulations with the contingency that you do some sort of liability waiver, or I think that's what they're talking about. What they want is, like, you know, they say hold harmless, and that's a great term, but you can adopt it and then direct me to draft a liability waiver coinciding, you know, with the ditch, etc., so that the town isn't, I guess, exposed to perceived liabilities from, you know, the third party issues involving the same. So you're your options are to approve it with the contingency, approve it without it, adopt or reject, and, deny it. So I do think it's a good idea to have the indemnification with it. And I think that was a good suggestion from the board. But beyond that, I don't have an opinion as to whether or not you want to approve it or not.
Okay, so what we could look at is if we decide to approve the request, and then we would have it worded so that it would be approved with the indemnification that you would put together.
Right, you can just approve it contingent on the applicant signing the indemnification document or liability waiver, however you want to phrase it.
Okay. All right. Any other board discussion? Well, I would entertain a motion then.
This is Jara. I make the motion that we grant the variance request at 1016 State Street, contingent upon the signature of the applicant of the full harmless agreement, or whatever the attorney wants to call that.
Indemnification. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll consider seconding it if we can put something in about who's paying for this,
Who's paying for
This-
the
agreement.
attorney agreement?
Yeah,
Okay,
because I don't believe the town should have to pay to get the, whether hold harmless or indemnification, whatever it's called. If the applicant wants to agree to pay for that to be done, I'll second the motion.
He does it all.
Clayton, Clay, are you still there?
I offer that as an amendment to your motion, Jara.
Thank you.
So, did you hear all that?
Yes.
So I believe we need to, Jared needs to amend the motion. for
So you have
that.
you had a motion and a second, so you need the second to withdraw, the original motion to withdraw, and then just restate the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I will withdraw my motion and restate it.
Okay, and the second,
Yeah, same.
the second's been withdrawn also, okay?
This is Chair, and I make the motion that we approve the variance request for 1016 State Street, contingent upon the applicant signing the indemnification drawn up by our attorney. And if the applicant agrees to pay for the 15 minutes that it takes to do that. Mr. Attorney, any idea what your fee would be for that?
No, I
Is
mean,
it
I
a
have,
or whatever.
it would probably end up being a quarter to half.
Hours.
No. I have so many indemnification agreements already pre-written and a couple that I've already done for Pitkin. It shouldn't take more, I mean, between a quarter and half an hour tops.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
I second the new motion.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried.
Was that unanimous?
No, I'm going to abstain.
Abstain?
I don't like this at all. I'm abstaining.
Do we have to have reasons to abstain, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Attorney, or can we just abstain?
You can abstain, and if there is a reason that you're abstaining, you should probably just vote in the negative.
Okay, then I'll vote in the negative.
All right.
Thank you for your consideration. I will investigate my other.
All right. Moving on, item 5-7, discuss with possible action setting a date for public hearing for the liquor license for the Pitkin Hotel. Sarah, wanna,
It can be no less than 30 days from today.
did you hear that?
What's the date of our next meeting?
I'm sorry?
What is the date of our next meeting? Is that 30 minutes?
The date of the next meeting is the 17th. That is 28 days.
So we need to, we'll ask the applicant. Do you have a time frame in mind?
We obtain of the liquor license.
Well,
What's the question again?
Public hearing.
so we need to have a public hearing
Right.
for the liquor license, and it needs to be a minimum of 30 days from today.
Right.
Our next regular scheduled meeting is only 28 days from today. So that's why I'm asking you if you have a time frame that we need to try to work with.
Well, we can't go to the July meeting, so we have to do it.
Okay, so sometime after 30 days from
Yes.
today. All right. So let's look at our schedules.
Oh, and Sarah, Pam got her.
I got the notification. Thank you.
Her already.
So Monday, the 24th.
Monday, the 24th.
Of June,
June.
right? That would meet our requirement for more than 30 days.
How long does it take after the public hearing to obtain the actual license?
You pay for concurrent review, which means that tomorrow I will send your application to the state and very little time. And I also, Attorney Booker, maybe you can jump in here if you know, but it is my understanding that very quickly, once the town approves a license, the turnover with the state, I don't believe that is significant. I'm not sure, but I can ask.
Do you
But
know
with,
how long it took, for instance, for Jake's to get approved after the town?
I believe that they say no more than 90 days. But that's not with concurrent review. So they should be looking at everything at the same time that the town is looking at everything. So I do not recall how long that took. If you send me an email, I can check, but I don't recall.
And Sarah, they won't tell you. It's impossible to project what the state will do. I will say that once the town has approved something, the state review is fairly limited to check boxes for your application. So their major concern is local approval. I've seen them come back in 3 business days, and I've seen them take 60 days. So it's impossible to say. There's a minimum requirement for them to initiate review. For us, I would say, I think you're looking at anywhere between 10 and 60 days. And I wouldn't want to give an answer to you differently, but I think you could expect it on the quicker end, but I'm not going to say on the record that you're going to get a review from the state, an agency that we have no control over, any quicker than what the statutory allotted time they're allowed to review it is. But I hope for you that it's very quick.
We've already paid under the table to get it done quick, so hopefully.
So there you go. You grease the skids. It's gonna happen quick.
So to ask you a question, Bob, right now, you throw out the 24th. That's after that 28-day minimum. Do you think it would be helpful if we decide if we said, you know what, let's do it on the 21st? I mean, that's a few days more or a few days quicker. And Sarah, would that work for you or not?
I will not be here.
Okay,
I apologize.
well, are you available the 24th?
Yes.
Okay, I think we better leave it at that.
Sounds good.
So,
24th of June.
Monday, the 24th of June. So that'll be a special session to approve
Bill Rivers.
the application.
Monday,
Sure.
what time?
What time?
I'm here, so no restrictions on my end.
6 o'clock. Okay, we'll do 6.
The meeting should be at 6 too.
So if I could just interject here, I know we have scheduled a couple of things during the summer months. Now that it is getting to be summer, I will have to verify that the Newcomb Center is available on these dates. If for some reason a date or time doesn't work, then we could hold a quick special meeting, possibly over Zoom, to reset the date. But just so that everybody is aware that that is a slight possibility.
Is there an alternative site we could use other than this place?
Well, if
Use the
we
hotel.
wanted internet,
The Zoom part is
right?
part of it.
I don't anticipate a problem, but I just thought I better put that out there just.
And we should know within a week if that date's gonna work, right? If you reach
Less
out.
than a week,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll
so-
know very quickly.
Okay.
What was the time again? June 24th at 6.
Sarah, is there anything else that we are pending on?
So not from the requirements, we have a full application. The board may request additional, the board can request, there's a few things the board can request. Attorney Faulkner, are you there? May I ask you a question?
Of course. No, I'm always here. I'm sorry to have to turn off my video. I keep getting low bandwidth.
That's okay. I just am wondering if the memo that we sent you for review with regard to liquor licensing, if that could be dispersed to the current board. Because I believe that it's some of the additional things that the board may be able to ask for. And that way we could let the applicant know ahead of the public hearing so he can have all that information available to the board.
Yeah, the last thing that I understand about that particular application was that we were missing a few major pieces.
We are not any longer. We have fingerprints and the sales tax number. We have a temporary sales tax number.
Okay, so when have you already, did I miss it and you submitted, you showed me the entire application for review and I just haven't done it?
I did not send you the fingerprint results.
Okay. So I've looked at the immediate application without the rest of it. And I don't see a problem. It seems to have the major things that the state cares about is the floor plans, which seem to be actually, done very well in this particular application. In fact, way better than most. I don't see any issue with the application itself, and so I think we could turn it around fairly quickly.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, I assume there's a a deadline, how many days before it has to be published?
Yes,
Is that any problem?
10 days at a
Oh,
minimum.
okay, so you can
Yeah,
meet
I'll
that,
take care of all that.
fine.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, no, we show no issues with the application and the timeline, sir. The notices have been done. We have plenty of time. If we're waiting until the 24th, is that what we're talking about? The 24th of June? Then we
Yes.
will have next is meeting the other requirements, and then we'll do all our part. If the trustees direct us accordingly, then you should have no issues with the state. That's always kind of a rubber stamp if the local government approves it.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
So I'm just looking at the calendar just for the board here. So now we have a work session scheduled for the 14th of June. We have our regular meeting on the 17th of June.
Yes.
And now we have a special meeting on the 24th of June. What do you guys think about if we move the work session to the same day as the special session, the 24th?
I would entertain that thought because I have June 10th as well as zoning board.
So
Now, if you want to.
I want to move the work session from the 14th and include it on the 24th
That's fine.
with the special session.
Well, how long will our special session take?
It shouldn't take very long, should it?
Depends on the board.
Yeah.
It should be fairly straightforward. It's an application, you review the application. If it's satisfactory, you can just approve it.
Okay.
I mean, basically, if you look at the application, a lot of it is check boxes and stuff, so that's, yeah.
Session still 5?
So what I'm thinking is that we were talking about doing the special session at 6. Let's set the work session for 7.
So
Does that sound all right, Sarah? Or to follow?
That's a better idea.
Okay, yeah, that's even better. Thank you, Jared.
If that removes any possibility of dealing with camping until July.
Right. Yep. All right, so we're gonna do that. Everybody's in agreement?
Can you repeat that again? Just,
We good, Ed?
repeat it again, so I have.
So that-
Make sure.
What we're looking at is moving the work session that we had just scheduled from the 14th and put it on the 24th to follow the special session. So that way,
Six.
Well,
yep,
show me-
that way we don't have to wait till 7 to get started. All right?
Okay.
We're good? Okay, done. 5-8, I would certainly entertain a motion to table that, giving it's already 10 o'clock. So
This is Jared, and I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
we've got a motion and multiple seconds. So all in favor, tabling 5-8, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So carried. 5-9, discuss with possible action, responding to the zoning board recommendation on a fence permit appeal for 428 State Street. Mr. Chairman, would you like to address the board?
Yes, sir. This. I'm doing here.
With the mic.
Forgot what hat I put on where I needed to be. So we had received the zoning.
Yep.
Zoning board had received a request from Mr. Varnell to at least review or look at his building permit that he had requested for a fence. And I don't know that everybody got a copy of that, but I know at the meeting, I provided a copy of it at the zoning board meeting when we addressed it. But basically, the fence permit was denied by our building inspector to give. And the special remarks was you cannot put a fence in a public right of way. Signed it. So the zoning board at least looked at it so that if he didn't look at it, felt like it would go to the board of trustees, and then if he didn't like that outcome, it would be appealed to the district court. We looked at it and saw that in the lane, we couldn't necessarily overwrite that. So we made the recommendation to send it to the board of trustees. The unanimous vote to either build or to approve the fence permit, building it in a location in regards to the pins on the property, or to review previously, or to review and approve the previously submitted land swap that was presented to the town previously. So that's information I have.
So am I mistaken, or hasn't this already been to the board? You've already discussed this, right?
It was discussed at the last meeting. I think Sarah put it on as discuss. It wasn't discussed and vote.
To receive the recommendation.
There you go.
Because the recommendation was not received by the board of trustees ahead of time at the last meeting.
Okay. So now we're receiving, just again, if you would state what the zoning board is asking
The recommendation.
for recommendation.
Recommendation to the board of trustees was to approve the building fence permit in regards to the setback from the pins of the property line, or approve the previously submitted land swap. That's what the motion and the second and the vote is.
Okay,
What was
And-
that last sentence, please?
That's what the motion, and second and the vote was on. Was the recommendation for the board of trustees to approve the building fence permit in regards to the pin, or excuse me, in regards to the setback from the pins of the property line, or approve the previously submitted land swap.
Okay, thank you.
all right, and we have provided our attorney with this information. Clay, would you like to provide your input, please?
Well, I'd rather field the direct question from the board. I don't have any input.
Okay, I believe we received information, I thought, from you about the town allowing a fence to be basically built in the town right away, which has been used as a road for more than 17 years now. And I thought that
Right now,
recommendation is that, maybe I'm wrong, but
no, I mean, I guess my point is I don't want to. I'd rather address the concerns of the board than interject an opinion. I do agree with what you're saying, Mr. Mayor. If the fence is located on or in an easement or a town right of way, I would highly advise against accepting the location of the fence.
I didn't word that very well, but I guess you could say that that's my concern, is to allow a fence to be built basically in the town right away for what's been used.
As I understand it, there's been drawn plats and there's an obvious conflict between roads, right of ways, and where existing alleyways, roads, and property lines exist. This is very common, and towns have often developed what's called a prescriptive easement on alleys and roadways, regardless of what an original plat may show. And I just would never suggest to you or any town that you should give up property, especially giving up property or fence lines that would suggest or even remotely imply that you'd have to change ditches, easements, right of ways, alleyways, roads, or any other established thoroughfare for the town.
All right, thank you. Board discussion.
Yeah, I don't even remember which meeting the board did this, March maybe?
I think so.
Or earlier, no.
I believe it was February, actually.
Yeah. Well, in this case, neither this board, when it was first brought up, or the zoning board, when they considered it, made available any information. And so I would like to table this until Sarah can provide, I would like at least the letter or building permit requesting this fence. The motion that the board made whenever that was dealt with. I understand the legal aspect of it, so I don't think we need another executive session, but I'd just like to see the details of exactly what and where. So I will move to table it until the next meeting that Sarah can provide those.
All right, the motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to table item 5-9. All in favor of tabling item 5-9, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
So carried. 5-10, review the treasurer's report and discuss and vote on the May 2024 disbursements. Sarah?
We have one change to the treasurer's report, an amount of $42.04 to be paid to Western Lumber. Mr. Erickson, I believe this is for streets. Western Lumber, is it streets or?
Yeah, sign repair.
Okay, sign repair. So 4204 sign repair for streets will be added.
Will be added, okay. Any other questions?
Appreciate Sarah's.
All right,
Make a motion.
could you speak that into the mic? So
Appreciate Sarah's report. I'll make a motion that we approve the disbursements. Month of May or month
for
of
May, these are for May. Yep. Have a motion?
I'll second it. This is Jared.
We have a second. All in favor of approving the May disbursements as presented with the revision as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So carried. Moving on. Under 5, updates, planning, discussion. Given that it's now 10 after 10, I'm going to ask the board if you see anything on there that you feel we need to discuss this evening. And if not, I say we leave those items on for a future meeting.
The only thing I'd add, Mr. Mayor, I'll bring up is the the zoning board has been working on building codes. quite some time, and we would like to have a work session with the trustees. Finalize and finish up some of that building codes.
Zoning code,
Rather than like,
some of the zoning code.
sorry.
Okay.
It's getting late.
So. Well, do we want to try to set a date for that work session?
June.
Make it in June.
Yes.
Well.
With the bullet items that we have left. The tag it with anything else. Might be a long night.
It could be a long, okay. So what I would suggest with that is if you guys have the revisions already put together. Or you want to,
No, there's a number of revisions that we have put together that Sarah has documented. However, there's a number of building code items, such as which version do we want to use? I don't have them all in front of me,
okay,
but there's a number of those that the Board of Trustees and the zoning board has asked to do that joint.
what I would ask them is if you could send those to Sarah also. And she could send them to the board just so we could start to have that. And that way we have a little bit of a jump start on the work session for that, so.
Sarah, can you pull the last bullet items off that last agenda? Sorry. Do we table? That's what it is. Right, Senator.
Will you call me and we'll get that done? Thank you.
All right, back to a date. You said you weren't available the 21st, right?
Correct.
So. I guess we're back to the 14th. Do we want to do the 14th as a work session for zoning board? Or do we want to do the camping ordinance that night?
Is there any way we could change something and do the work session? I don't know how that works with the zoning board meeting, the same night that was.
That might be a possibility.
So you're looking at the 10th as your zoning board meeting, right?
That is correct.
So I'm okay with that. I won't be here. I'll zoom in. I could probably zoom in, but
What is that, June 10th?
if I'm not driving,
Yeah, June 10.
June 10th. So,
The normal regular zoning.
right.
So would the work session be at 6? Is that?
Do you have other items already for that?
So far, we have no items for June 10th. So
Okay,
I'm aware.
so
Haven't received anything.
preference 6, 7, what time are you guys usually doing yours?
Basically, maybe 7 o'clock, kind of mirror.
Okay. So 7 o'clock on the 10th. That will be the joint Board of Trustees and zoning board discussion of revisions for updating the zoning code. All right, anything else board sees under 5? We need to bring up, discuss? Not, I don't see any other special additions, reports. I don't have a report. Sarah, you have
No
anything?
reports.
Nope. And we have written reports, I believe, for everyone else, so. And those are available online, is that right?
Correct.
All right, so. I would certainly entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Do you need a motion to table those items?
They're not, I don't believe so. Under updates, it's not an action item, so I think we're all right on that.
I move we adjourn the meeting.
I second that motion.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Let's go home. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Thanks, Clay.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Hey, Eddie, thank you for